And welcome back, everyone. Decision 2022, 13 minutes now after 7 o'clock. The polls have been closed for about 13 minutes, and we have seen the first numbers roll in about 3.5 minutes ago. Joined right now by our friend Dr. Andra Gillespie, who's here to give an analysis of what we are seeing tonight and what the expectation can be. We've heard some good news already from Fulton County that there really have not been any issues whatsoever at any of the precincts.
Well, that portends perhaps an earlier night than normal because we're used to waiting for Fulton County numbers to come in. So that's a good sign. And so these numbers that we see right now are very lopsided because, of course, Fulton County is a heavily Democratic county. I expect that race to tighten. The exit poll numbers, which have recently been released, suggest a tight race that might end up going to a runoff.
What sort of counties should we be looking at tonight that would give us a litmus of the expectation?
Well, I think you have to look at what happens in Metro Atlanta, but then balance that with what's happening in the rest of the state. And so we have to look at what turnout rates look like in both the Atlanta and non-Atlanta counties and look to see how they balance it out. You know, if there were a sign where we started to see Cobb County or Gwinnett County voting more Republican than they have in the last few election cycles, that portends well for Herschel Walker. But if we see them performing as they've performed in previous elections within the last 5 years, I would expect that this is going to be at least a competitive night in this particular race.
I spoke with Chuck Todd a couple of weeks ago. We were sitting around having a cup of coffee talking about Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp. And he was saying no matter what kind of campaign she runs, it will be a very, very difficult sled for her. Because historically, when you look in the United States, those who have been unsuccessful at their first go-round for governor generally don't fare as well the second time out. He could not think of an instance where a challenger had come back to defeat the incumbent in such circumstances.
Well, I mean, and there are reasons for that. In 2018, you had two candidates who had never been governor before running for an open seat. They were more evenly matched, and Abrams, as being part of the insurgent party, was running as the opposing party against the incumbent president and his party, which were unpopular. And so 2018 was a wave election in which Democrats gained control of the House of Representatives, and Abrams was buoyed by that national fervor. Today, Brian Kemp is an incumbent. We've seen what he can do as governor, and many Republicans like what he's done. And Abrams is still running the insurgent candidacy, but now her party is the party that's in power nationally, and they're unpopular. So she's had more headwinds and more challenges this time.
He played poker with Donald Trump, and he won on two hands. And that was high-stakes game that he was playing, and that has given him a footing of which he did not have 4 years ago.
Well, I mean, that's true. And then also he had a record to run on. And so Georgians, especially Republican Georgians, knew what Brian Kemp had done. They had approved of what Brian Kemp had done, and they didn't believe the hype that Donald Trump was trying to sell, that he was a rhino, because Brian Kemp is by no means a Republican in name only.
What's been your view of Senator Warnock's campaign? I was in Savannah for the debate, and I thought he was somewhat passive or quiet in the debate. I was surprised that he didn't really come out swinging at Herschel Walker. And really throughout the campaign, he has been somewhat quiet in terms of modern American politics.
Well, he hasn't been quiet on Twitter in the last couple of days. And I think some of that fervor probably could have done him well during the debate. Many people tuned into the debate. They had certain expectations about Herschel Walker faltering, and he didn't. He exceeded expectations, may have made some Republican voters who were on the fence a little bit more comfortable with the idea of voting for Walker. If Warnock had tried to dispatch him and was prepared for the onslaught of questions that were going to come to him, this may have been a slightly different situation, but this was always going to be a tight race, and Warnock was going to have lots of challenges just because of the national political climate.
You know, oftentimes in this era of modern politics, it is said that debates really don't have the same gravitas. Maybe they do presidentially, but certainly down on the ticket as far as governor or the U.S. Senate or even congressional races, it just doesn't catch people's attention the way that it maybe once did. But this one did. This one in Savannah was different. It seemed to galvanize a lot of Republican support around the state.
Well, what debates teach us, especially those who haven't made up their minds, is it gives them additional information about the candidates. And Herschel Walker, as a novice candidate, was somebody who some people were giving the benefit of the doubt to. And there were lots of questions about whether or not he is intellectually up for the job. When he did better than expected in that debate, especially for Republican voters who might be inclined to vote for him, but had some concerns about the abortion stories, had some concerns about the domestic violence, his performing better than expected maybe gave them the justification and the rationalization to vote Republican.
Hey, I think the bar was so low. I mean, anything above heart and lung function was seen as success for him, really. I mean, it was low.
And so I think the important thing to take away from that debate is that most people made up their minds and they were watching it for the spectacle. But there's that small sliver of voters who could be very decisive in this race, who needed the information in that debate in order to make up their minds about who to support.
All right, Dr. Gillespie, thank you. We are going to take a break right now. We'll continue. Election 2022, we are just getting started and going, as Lionel Richie once sang, all night long.